You never forget the moment a nurse walks into your room with empty hands and eyes full of pity. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely meeting my gaze. "Your baby didn't make it." The world didn't stop. The machines kept beeping. The fluorescent lights still buzzed above me like nothing had happened. But inside me, everything died. My heartbeat felt like an echo in a cave. My arms, once aching to hold my newborn, suddenly felt foreign, hollow. I stared at the blanket she handed me, pale pink with tiny embroidered flowers. The one I had packed months before in joyful anticipation. Now it was all I had left. I never even got to see her face. They said she was stillborn. Complications. Placenta issues. All I remembered was the anesthesia, the emergency C-section, the blur of voices before I passed out. When I woke up, they told me she was gone. Just like that. Her name was supposed to be Ava Grace. I had painted her nursery sky blue and lavender, stenciled her name above the crib, bought books to read to her at night. But after that day I locked the door to that room and never went in again. I couldn't bear to see the empty crib. I grieved like a mother with no grave to visit. They handed me ashes, but I never saw her body. Just a sealed urn and a neatly typed death certificate. My ex, Darren, barely looked at me after it happened. He said nothing. Offered no comfort. A few weeks later he packed a bag and left. Said it was too much for him. As if it wasn't too much for me. Months turned to years. I moved apartments, got a job at a diner to keep my mind busy. But the ache never left. Every child's laughter was a stab in my ribs. Every lullaby, a whisper of what could have been. People told me I should move on. That maybe it was God's plan. But how do you move on from a child you carried, named, and dreamed of every night? You don't. Then, 6 years later, something happened that shook my world so violently I thought I might be losing my mind. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was on a break at work, scrolling absent-mindedly through Facebook when I saw it. A photo that stopped my heart cold. It was a birthday party post from a girl I barely knew. Jenna, someone I'd gone to high school with. She had married a guy named Mark, someone I vaguely remembered working as a technician at the hospital years ago. They had a daughter now, and this post was a full album of her 6th birthday bash. Unicorn cake. Balloons. Glittery tiara. But it wasn't the decorations that grabbed me, it was the little girl. She was standing in front of the cake, eyes bright, grinning wide. But what I saw made my fingers go numb. She had my dimple. The same deep dimple on her left cheek that I had inherited from my mother. She had my smile, the same slight overbite I had as a kid. And on her right hand, just below the wrist, was a small strawberry-shaped birthmark. Just like mine. Just like the one the ultrasound tech had mentioned during one of my last scans. I stared at that photo for a full 5 minutes, my heart thudding so loud it drowned out the sounds of the diner. I zoomed in. Then zoomed in again. No. It couldn't be. It was impossible. But deep down something primal whispered, "That's her. That's your daughter." I felt dizzy. I looked again at the name, Bella. Age 6. Same age Ava would have been. Same birthday. Same look in her eyes that I saw every time I stared in the mirror. Was it just a coincidence? A trick of the mind born from too much grief? No. This was something else. I stood up abruptly, making my coffee spill. My manager asked if I was okay, but I couldn't hear her. I mumbled something about feeling sick and left early. My hands shook the entire drive home. Once I got to my apartment, I pulled out Ava's death certificate. I stared at the date, the time, the attending physician, everything about that day. And then I did something I hadn't dared do in years. I opened the locked door to Ava's nursery. The boxes were still there. The pink blanket. The ultrasound photos. The baby book I never got to fill. And suddenly I felt the air shift. I hadn't buried a child. I had buried a lie. Because if that little girl was who I thought she was, someone didn't just let me believe she was dead. Someone stole her. And I was going to find out who. It started with the birth certificate. I had never looked at it before. The hospital gave me a packet of paperwork after the C-section, but in my haze of grief and sedatives, I had shoved it all into a box and told myself never to open it. That box had sat untouched in the back of Ava's nursery for 6 long years. But now, with my hands trembling and my heart pounding, I pulled it out. There it was. Ava Grace Wilkins. Born at 2:14 a.m. June 2nd. Weight 6 pounds 7 ounces. Length 19.5 inches. The attending physician? Dr. Gary Halpern. I didn't recognize the name. I thought Dr. Patel was the one scheduled for my delivery, but maybe they'd brought in someone else when the emergency C-section happened. Then I noticed something strange. The box marked mother's confirmation signature was blank. Why would that be blank? Legally, for a death certificate to be finalized, the parent has to sign off, especially in a stillbirth case. I had no memory of signing anything, but I also had no memory of being asked. Something wasn't right. I dug deeper into the folder and found the cremation authorization. Also unsigned by me. It said the ashes were picked up by next of kin, with no name listed. Just initials, D.W. Darren Wilkins. My ex. The same man who ran off 2 weeks after I lost our child. The man who couldn't look me in the eyes for days leading up to the birth. The one who insisted I take the epidural even when I wanted to try natural birth. Who encouraged me to let go when I was panicking about the risks. Was it just grief that made him act distant? Or guilt? I started connecting dots that I had ignored for too long. Darren had worked IT for the hospital system back then. He had access to patient files, scheduling systems, internal databases. When I had a few concerns about the delivery team changing last minute, he told me I was just anxious and hormonal. But what if he had done more than that? What if he'd planned something? I went back to the Facebook post. Jenna, Mark's wife, had tagged the birthday location. I clicked through the photos again. Then I checked Mark's profile. He worked in biomedical services. At St. Vincent's Hospital, the same one where I gave birth. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. The connections were tightening like a noose. Mark had access to the hospital. Darren worked there too. Bella's age matched Ava's. Her face was practically a mirror of mine. And now I was staring at a birth certificate that didn't even have my signature on it. I felt like I was going to throw up. I took a screenshot of the photo and sent it to my best friend, Kira. The message I sent with it just said, "Please tell me I'm not crazy. Look at this little girl. Do you see it too?" She called within minutes, her voice shaking. "Oh my God, Jules. She looks just like you." That's all the confirmation I needed. I knew what I had to do next. I needed legal help. But first I had to know if any hospital records existed that contradicted what I had been told. So I drove straight to St. Vincent's, clutching the folder like a shield. The woman at medical records was polite but robotic. "I'm sorry, Ms. Wilkins. Due to privacy laws, we can only release those records in person with a notarized request. It might take up to 2 weeks. I had a stillbirth here," I said, my voice cracking. 6 years ago. I never saw my baby's body. And now I think she's alive. The woman froze. Her eyes softened slightly, but her training kicked back in. "I understand, ma'am. But protocol." I leaned in, lowering my voice. "Then tell me this. Who signed off on the cremation?" He typed something. Paused. Typed again. "I'm sorry, there's no record under your name. Or under Ava Grace Wilkins." She looked up. "Are you sure you had the delivery here?" I stared at her. "Yes, I'm sure. Room 418. I was under general anesthesia. I still have the hospital bracelet." She tilted her head. "There is one Ava Wilkins listed as discharged to foster care protocol on June 4, 2019. My breath caught. Foster care? "I was told she died," I whispered. I was handed ashes. Her eyes widened slightly, but she covered it up quickly. "Ma'am, I suggest you speak to someone in legal or administration." Immediately. I walked out of that hospital with more questions than answers. But now I had proof. Someone had registered my baby for foster care, not listed her as deceased. Someone had forged paperwork. Like, hidden her. And I was beginning to think that someone might not just be Darren, but the hospital itself. My phone buzzed. It was Kira again. Her voice was breathless. I went down a rabbit hole. "You're not going to believe this." "What?" "That guy Mark? Jenna's husband? He used to work in neonatal transport. You know what that means. I swallowed hard. It meant he had access to babies. And I was starting to realize, this was never just a mistake. This was a theft. They say a mother can sense her child from miles away. I used to scoff at such poetic sentiments, until it happened to me. It had been 6 long, grief-stricken years since I'd walked out of that hospital with empty arms and shattered hopes. The hospital's response had been sterile and procedural. An investigation, a stack of incident reports, and then silence. My pleas were met with pity but never justice. Even my husband, Sean, eventually begged me to move on. But I couldn't. I felt her absence in my bones. I'd wake up from dreams of her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, only to realize that I never even got to hold her once. The world moved on, but I remained frozen in that sterile, cold maternity ward, stuck between hope and heartbreak. To cope, I poured myself into volunteer work, specifically at organizations advocating for maternity ward safety and maternal rights. That's where I met people who had their own terrifying stories. Babies mixed up, stolen, or adopted out without consent. Each story lit a fire in my belly. Something in me whispered that my daughter's story wasn't over yet. One afternoon, I was helping organize a photo board at a Missing and Reunited Families event. I was pinning up stories when a voice behind me said, "Hey, could you help me with this?" I turned and saw a woman, maybe mid-30s, struggling with her display board. She smiled warmly, and beside her stood a little girl, who looked exactly like my baby pictures. It was the kind of resemblance that made my knees go weak. Her curly hair, the same dimple on the left cheek, the same stubborn arch to her brow. My breath hitched. She looked up at me and tilted her head curiously, then she smiled. That smile. It was like seeing a ghost and an angel at the same time. Her name was Lily. I tried not to spiral, but my heart was thudding. I couldn't stop staring. The woman, Cassandra, noticed. "She gets a lot of attention," she said, laughing. "Looks nothing like me though. She's adopted." That was the moment everything around me seemed to shift. I felt like I was standing in the center of a hurricane. "Adopted?" I echoed, my voice hoarse. "Yeah," she nodded. "We adopted her when she was a newborn. It was a closed adoption. All we know is that it was a hospital placement. No name, no history." I felt dizzy. Could this be it? Could Lily be my daughter? Over the next few weeks, I kept attending the support group and quietly built a friendship with Cassandra. I didn't tell her what I suspected, not yet. That would be reckless. Instead, I collected pieces, dates, documents, even photos of Lily as a baby. The more I saw, the more I knew. I visited my old hospital records. Through a legal loophole and help from a sympathetic attorney friend, I got access to archived birth documentation. That's when I found it. A baby girl, born on my due date with my last name originally on her chart, had been reclassified and reassigned less than 12 hours after birth. The initials of the attending nurse matched a name I remembered, Nurse Irene. She had seemed off that night, but I never knew why. More digging revealed that she had quietly resigned 6 months after my delivery. No reasons were listed. Her records were clean. But something didn't sit right. Then one night Cassandra called me crying. Lily had come home from school saying another mom had asked if she was her daughter. I froze. "I didn't know what to say," Cassandra sobbed. "She's my daughter. I've raised her for 6 years." My heart cracked open. I hadn't meant to cause chaos, but the truth couldn't stay hidden anymore. I confessed everything to Cassandra. Every suspicion. Every document. Every nightmare I'd lived through. We cried on the phone for hours. Cassandra was a good woman, a kind woman. She had no idea the adoption had been tied to a lie. She offered to do a DNA test, to give both of us peace. We took the test in quiet agony. A week later, the results came back. 99.9% probability. Lily was my daughter. My world turned upside down. All at once, I had answers. And yet it led to even more painful questions. Who took her from me? Why was she placed for adoption? And how deep did the deception go? I still didn't know how or if I'd ever get my daughter back. But I did know one thing. Whoever had orchestrated this thought they'd buried the truth forever. They were wrong. You never expect your entire life to implode over a cup of coffee. But that's exactly what happened the day Cassandra and I met with the hospital's legal team. We sat together side by side, not as enemies, but as two mothers who had been wronged in different ways. Cassandra was trembling. I could feel it in the way her fingers tapped the paper cup rhythmically. Lily wasn't with us. She was at school, blissfully unaware that her entire identity had just been rewritten. The hospital's conference room smelled of stale carpet and denial. The lawyers tried to be polite, offering apologies for the unfortunate mix-up. But I wasn't here for niceties. I was here for truth. For justice. And I had receipts. Let me be clear, I said, sliding over a copy of the birth record I had uncovered. Your nurse, Irene Delaney, falsified documents. She reclassified my baby as a no-parent-identified case. That's fraud. That's kidnapping. One of the hospital administrators flinched. The older lawyer cleared his throat and leaned forward. We understand your frustration, Ms. Baldwin, but Frustration. I snapped. This woman raised my child for 6 years while I mourned a baby I was told died in delivery. That's not frustration. That's trauma. That's theft. Cassandra reached into her bag and pulled out the DNA results. We've already done a paternity test. Lily is biologically Olivia's daughter. The room went silent. The younger attorney scribbled furiously on a legal pad, his face pale. The senior one looked stunned. They whispered between themselves, but I wasn't waiting for their permission to proceed. I want a full internal investigation. Every nurse on duty that night. Every baby adoption processed in the last 10 years. And I want answers about Nurse Irene. Where is she? Who did she work with? Who signed off on her resigning quietly? It was then that one of the administrators, a woman with graying hair and shaking hands, finally spoke. Irene wasn't just a nurse. Her sister ran an unlicensed adoption network out of state. We terminated her when rumors began surfacing, but nothing was proven at the time. My stomach flipped. So it was a trafficking ring. They had stolen newborns, babies like mine, and funneled them into the black market adoption system, bypassing legal checks, forging records, and laundering infants into unsuspecting families desperate to adopt. And my daughter had been one of them. Tears blurred my vision. You let this happen. You covered it up. The older lawyer leaned back, his voice brittle. We're prepared to offer a settlement. I don't want your money, I hissed. I want the truth exposed. I want Irene in prison. And I want my daughter to know the people responsible for this were held accountable. Cassandra nodded silently beside me. We both do. From that moment forward, the floodgates opened. I went public. News stations picked up the story. Mother finds missing daughter after hospital switches baby at birth. The headlines were sensational, but behind the media frenzy was a chilling pattern. Other mothers started coming forward, some with missing children, others who had questioned suspicious hospital events but were silenced. The investigation into the hospital blew wide open. Former staffers were subpoenaed. Irene Delaney was found living in Nevada under a different name. When she was arrested, she was still working as a nurse in a pediatric clinic. Her mugshot haunted me. She had looked me in the eye the night I gave birth, told me everything would be okay. And then she stole my baby and sold her. The criminal charges were filed. Multiple counts of child trafficking, falsification of records, and conspiracy. More arrests followed. Nurses. Paper pushers. Even a senior administrator who'd retired years earlier. Still, in the eye of the storm, one question remained. What would happen to Lily? Cassandra and I were torn in ways no mother should ever have to be. She had raised Lily with love and care. I had carried her, birthed her, searched for her. We both wanted to do right by her, but neither of us knew what that truly meant. After weeks of emotional talks, legal mediation and therapy sessions, we finally agreed on one thing. Lily would decide. She was 6. Too young to make complex custody decisions, but old enough to express feelings. We hired a child psychologist. We spent time together, Cassandra, Lily, and me, going to parks, museums, and even therapy sessions where Lily could understand the unusual situation unfolding around her. One day, after an afternoon of baking cookies, Lily looked up at me and said, "Mommy Olivia, can I have two mommies? Like forever." Tears streamed down my face. It wasn't the fairy tale ending I had expected, but maybe that was okay. Because sometimes justice doesn't come in a courtroom or a check. Sometimes, it comes in the form of a little girl smiling up at you asking if she can belong to you too. It's funny how life can shatter and rebuild in the same breath. When Lily asked if she could have two mommies forever, I realized something. This wasn't just about me getting my daughter back. It was about her gaining a truth she never had. A truth she deserved. Cassandra and I looked at each other, our hands meeting over the flour-dusted counter. "Yes, sweetheart," I said, my voice cracking. "You can have two mommies. Forever." That moment sealed everything. Not in a court document. Not in a custody battle. But in the heart of a child who had survived a lie, and still chose love. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. The state launched a full investigation into the black market adoption ring that had stolen not only Lily but dozens of other children. The hospital was sued in a massive class action lawsuit. Irene Delaney pled guilty to multiple charges in exchange for testifying against her co-conspirators. Her sentencing was broadcast live. I watched from home, Lily tucked into my side like a puzzle piece finally in place. Cassandra came over that evening carrying a small white box. Inside was Lily's baby blanket, the one she'd been wrapped in when Cassandra first held her. "She should have this," she said softly. "It belongs to her." I opened my palm and showed her what I had found in my attic. A photograph of me holding Lily seconds after she was born. "And this belongs with her too." We exchanged the items like sacred offerings. Not as enemies. Not even as rivals. But as something entirely new, partners in motherhood. We decided to co-parent. Officially. The court signed off on a special custodial agreement that gave both of us legal rights. But more importantly, it gave Lily stability. She spent weekdays with me and weekends with Cassandra, or sometimes the reverse. Holidays we shared. Birthdays became a joint event, full of laughter and too much cake. Therapy helped all of us heal. Lily especially. She had questions, so many questions. Why had someone taken her from me? Why did people lie? Would I leave her again? Each answer chipped away at the silence that had built up around her. And each time I said, "No, baby. I'm not going anywhere," a piece of her seemed to settle into place. Eventually she started calling me Mom. Cassandra remained Mama. It wasn't planned, it just happened. Natural, like water finding its level. And strangely it worked. I never thought I'd share motherhood with the woman who unknowingly raised my stolen child. But Cassandra was kind, nurturing, and remorseful. She stepped back when she needed to. She stepped in when I couldn't handle something. We didn't always agree, but we always talked. For Lily, the media frenzy died down. Our story was no longer front-page news, but that didn't mean it stopped mattering. Every so often I'd get emails from other mothers. Some thanking me. Some still searching. Some just needing to know they weren't crazy for feeling like something had been stolen from them. I tried to answer them all. The hospital was restructured from the top down. New protocols were implemented. Every baby born there now had GPS-tagged ankle monitors and biometric scanning for matching mother and child. It was high-tech, but it couldn't undo what had been done. One afternoon, Cassandra and I were at the park watching Lily chase bubbles, when she turned to me and said, "I used to think I was her only mother. Now I see I was just her guardian until she found her way home." I swallowed the lump in my throat. She was always meant to know us both. I think, somehow the universe knew she'd need us both. It wasn't perfect. I missed those 6 years. Missed first words. First steps. First birthdays. But I got something even more precious in return. I got her trust. One evening, just before bed, Lily crawled into my lap with her favorite storybook and whispered, "I'm glad you found me." I kissed the top of her head, holding her close. I never stopped looking. Years passed, but the scars of what happened never fully faded. They just softened. Like old burns that no longer sting but still ache in the rain. Lily was 10 the first time she asked about Irene Delaney. We were planting hydrangeas in the backyard when she looked up and said, "Was the lady who took me ever sorry?" I froze. Cassandra, kneeling beside me, exchanged a glance I'd grown used to. A silent understanding passed between us. She wasn't sorry the way people should be, I said slowly, brushing dirt from my hands. But she did go to prison. And she can't hurt anyone ever again. That was enough for Lily for now. Irene had been sentenced to 35 years without parole. The trial revealed how deep the corruption ran. Doctors, nurses, birth certificate clerks, all working in shadows. All exposed. All prosecuted. Some of them cried during sentencing. Irene didn't. But she lost everything. Her social standing. Her licenses. Her money. Her freedom. She tried to contact Cassandra once from prison. Sent a letter begging her to testify for early release. Cassandra tore it up without reading past the first line. She stole from both of us, she whispered. She doesn't get a second chance. As for the hospital, it paid millions in damages. I received a settlement, but no amount of money could replace what I lost. So it helped. I used it to start a nonprofit that connected mothers searching for missing children. I called it Lily's Light. And every child we helped reunite reminded me why I kept fighting, even on the days I wanted to disappear into grief. Lily thrived. She was curious and empathetic, bold in ways I never dared to be as a child. At her school's Who Inspires You? Day, she stood up and pointed to both me and Cassandra. My mom saved me, she said proudly. And now they help other kids get found too. There wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. The past would never fully disappear. Every so often Lily had nightmares. About being lost. About people not believing she was who she said she was. But she always woke up in a bed surrounded by love. And slowly the nightmares came less often. When Lily turned 13, I gave her the original photograph of us from the delivery room. Cassandra gave her the blanket again, this time stitched into a quilt with her initials and the date she came home for good. She burst into tears. I don't remember this day, she said. But it still feels like mine. It is, I told her. It always was. One day she may want to read the full court transcripts. Know every ugly detail. But for now we give her truth in layers. Enough to understand but never so much that it breaks her. As for me, I've forgiven myself. It took a long time. Longer than I'd like to admit. For years I blamed myself for being unconscious during that critical hour. For not screaming louder. For giving up hope too soon. But I wasn't weak. I was wounded. Now I see my strength in Lily's smile. In every step forward. In every day I choose not to let bitterness win. And Cassandra? She's family now. Not by blood. Not even by law anymore. Just by choice. We never tried to force a label on what we became. But it's real. And rare. On Lily's 16th birthday, we both stood at her side as she blew out her candles and I whispered, "Make a wish." She said, "I don't need to. Everything I want is already here." The crowd clapped. Cameras flashed. But all I could see was the baby I held for one breath, then lost for 6 years, standing tall, loved and finally whole. And that to me was the sweetest revenge of all. Not Irene's downfall. Not the lawsuits or the sentencing. But this. A girl once stolen, now surrounded by unshakable love and identity. No longer lost. No longer a secret. Just Lily. Ours. Hers. Free. If this story struck a chord in your heart, don't forget to like, comment and share. Someone out there might need this reminder. No matter how deep the betrayal, love always finds its way home. And don't forget to subscribe. New stories drop daily. You won't want to miss what's coming next.